Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology, and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com. Hello and welcome to SciTech Culture, the show where we discuss science, technology, and culture in all its myriad of forms. My name's Ben Warner, and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern to kick off our new year of SciTech Culture videos for 2016. How are we today, Steve?
I'm good. Hello, everyone. It's great to be back and doing another SciTech Culture.
Absolutely. So we thought we'd start off on a slightly different note this year. We might, be talking about, science and technology predictions and things like that to kick off the year. But we're going to take a more philosophical route today with a little bit of science thrown in, I guess, because obviously it's that time of the year where everyone's, sort of wanting to get their resolutions going well, and maybe even by now they might have given up already to see how it all goes. But to bring it back even further, the idea of this notion of that society and culture really pushes this notion that our lives go in a straight line in terms of trajectory, whether it's your life, your career, personal relationships, however it is. And that maybe it's not that, and we might be doing ourselves a disservice if we're thinking along those lines, because the idea is if you're going in a straight line and it's meant to be, what comes later is better than what you had before, you're improving, I guess, as you go along. In the concept of a straight line, if you happen to go off the rails at some point, that could be a devastating, you could see that as a devastating setback. But maybe it's not all. Like that, and maybe it's the concept of your whatever's happening to you is going in terms of cycles, or rather than straight lines. So you'll have to bear with us while we get through a bit of that. But what do you think about that concept in general, Steve? That sort of thing.
Well, it's an interesting thing. Maybe we should look at it from a quantum perspective, where you might say that light exists both as a wave and a particle. And so maybe there is a linear trajectory of life, which from one angle, that's what we see, but it's actually made up of a whole lot of little cycles at the same time. And I think there's no question at every level in life we see a cycle. On a larger scale, you have families, kids, and that cycle goes on and on and on. At a cellular level, your cells replenish themselves or replicate themselves, throughout your lifetime, and that is a cycle in itself. So, either ends of the scale, there's the large end, there's a small end. Human civilizations rise and fall. There's a lot of cycles in our world.
Yeah, absolutely. Just wanted to touch on something you raised there about cells replenishing within your body, and this. I saw a couple of some of these. Blog sites purporting to be reputable, saying that purporting to say that the idea. Well, they're promoting the idea that every 7 years, every cell in your body has changed because it's replenished itself. So, in a sense, every 7 years you're like a new person, or you've been replaced with something else, so to speak, even though it's still you. It's probably, as we were saying before, it's probably a little arbitrary what they're saying, because, in a sense, all your cells do get replaced at some point, but it's probably that notion that it happens exactly every 7 years is probably a little arbitrary.
Yeah, no, that's the way that's going to happen. But, it's a nice idea, and the science is right. So over 7 years, all of your cells that replicate will have replicated at least once. Not all your cells replicate. Okay, that's important to know as well. So there's certain parts of the body where you don't get that. There is, of course, renewal. Your hair grows and you cut it, so it's not the same cells. But, it doesn't happen all synchronized so that all cells in your body are on the same clock. We do actually regenerate ourselves. So it's quite interesting that. And, even once we die, our hair and fingernails continue to grow for some time afterwards. So
Mm.
that's interesting in itself. Death of the sentient being doesn't mean the cells necessarily all stop at the same time. But you've definitely got those cycles where cell growth continues.
So if we now take a step back and look at this from a more cultural perspective, I've kind of thought maybe, going along thinking about these things more and more often, that I think there is a big part of the way society and culture, especially in your standard Western cultures, push a lot of people towards this idea that you progress in a straight line when it comes to your life. So, the basic template, of course, would be, you're born, you go to primary school, you go to high school, you go to university or college. Somewhere in the middle there, you meet someone, you marry them, then, you progress in your career, go further up the ladder, you retire. In the middle there, you're having kids. And then once you retire, you have, however many years, your body, I guess, lasts for you. And then that's it. And that's like a standard template. And obviously there are variations to that. But when you look at it in that way, it's a straight line. There isn't this notion that maybe you could be in the middle of experiencing something, like say you're doing, I don't know, maybe you decided to pursue a career. You've devoted yourself to it for 10 years, but somehow it just flames out and it ends. Yeah. So that's like a cycle rather than a straight line. And there's nothing actually wrong with that. It just means that that thing you devoted yourself to just naturally ended and you're going on to the next thing. But if you're looking at it in terms of a straight line, it might seem like a setback.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting way of looking at that, and I tend to agree. What I find most interesting is that some of the people that we as a society look to with the most interest are people who have been on a particular path. Some incident has happened, and they've started up and done something completely differently, and they've done it so well that they've become, very noted. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got people, say, like David Bowie, who reinvented himself. Madonna, who based herself on David Bowie, reinvented themselves so many times during their careers, as artists, but the way they created their art, and artists, of course, do that a lot too. So there's a lot to be said for these cycles. Cumulatively, I guess that's, you can see that as building a linear sort of path forwards. And even when, life unexpectedly takes a turn or a career path doesn't go to where, maybe it was anticipated to, restarting or starting something new, it's a bit like is it a wave, is it a particle, is it a straight line, or is it a cycle? And I think as long as people embrace opportunity, that's what cycles are. Cycles are when opportunity becomes, a path forward.
And I think an interesting point to factor in here is that this idea of seeing things as a setback if they don't work out, and perhaps you shouldn't naturally jump to that conclusion. If something wasn't meant to work out, maybe it just wasn't meant to work out, and that's how it is. And even though maybe when you get to the end sort of thing and you look back, you can see a linear progression. Perhaps while you're in the middle of it, if you strictly look at it as a linear progression, you probably might do yourself more harm than good in a psychological sense if anything doesn't work out or doesn't work.
Yeah, well, I think people put a lot of pressure on themselves and see the achievements, as you're saying, in a linear sense, and not to. It's almost as if they don't achieve what they set out to, then they're not moving forwards. But that's, if you take a quantum approach to understanding the universe, that time's an arrow that goes in one direction. So, what you achieve or don't achieve is a human aspect, but you're definitely progressing towards something.
Yeah, exactly. But maybe... Yeah, and maybe it's just you got to keep everything in perspective and just build on everything as every experience adding up to this cumulative overall experience that we all have, and that's where the benefit of it lies.
I guess so. I mean, it's hard when you're in the middle of life to know exactly how you should view it. But I guess if we look, cosmologically at the universe, we know there was a beginning. We can argue about what that beginning was. We know that for the last 13 and a bit billion years, it's been happening in a particular way, and we know there'll be an ending. That's linear, but within that, just like a human, galaxies, stars, start, begin, end, and do it over and over again until it becomes a cold, dark, quiet place, which I think is where we as humans end up to.
Yeah, exactly. Sort of just something you need to be aware of, I guess, as you go along. But actually, when you point that out, and just to finish up, I think it's kind of like there's a bit of randomness within that linear, seeming randomness to that linear thing, which is, I guess, what, quantum mechanics is all about, isn't it? It's sort of like everything's going everywhere at once, but it can also be, present as, at a macro level, it looks like it's all normal and going in a particular direction.
That's right. But, when you actually look at it closely on really small scales, then you realise, it doesn't quite always work the way that, perhaps we think it should.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that might be a good way to sum up what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Steve, we might wrap it up there. So thanks again. We've had a good kickoff to the year, I think, and look forward to a lot more episodes this year. It should be great.
Excellent.
All right. So don't forget our website, SciTechCulture.com. You can get all of our links there. Interact with us on Twitter, Google Plus, and Facebook. So I'd love to hear from you. We've got our photography on Instagram, and we'll be writing our blogs and lots more things as the year progresses. And if you think of anyone that might be interested in these discussions that we have on SciTech Culture, then feel free to send them to SciTechCulture.com. We'd greatly appreciate that. All right. So that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.